You see, there is a certain amount of damage that is done to a chosen empath when you have religious and spiritual communities and they operate like a cult. It starts as a sanctuary, a place that promises belonging, healing, and direction. But slowly the light dims. You stop hearing God for yourself and start needing someone else to confirm your every move. Your empathy becomes a leash, your discernment becomes a threat, and before you realize it, what you thought was a faith community has turned into a spiritual cage. Cult like systems don't begin with control, they begin with love. They study your heart, your wounds, your need for belonging. They flood you with validation until your nervous system equates obedience with safety. And because empaths crave connection, they open their energy too wide, too fast. Soon, you're told your every thought must be approved. You can't question the leader. That's rebellion. You can't rest. That's being lukewarm. You can't express pain. That's negative energy. Bit by bit, your spiritual autonomy is dismantled and repackaged as submission. When a community becomes a cult, the empath's mind becomes its battlefield. Gaslighting replaces guidance, fear replaces faith. The empath's internal compass, once so clear, starts spinning under the weight of guilt and manipulation. You start apologizing for emotions that were once sacred. You start mistrusting your own intuition. Every time you feel something is off, you question if it's the devil attacking you or your ego resisting. It's psychological warfare that's masked as spiritual warfare. Over time, the empath internalizes the cult's voice as their own. That's how spiritual abuse works. It colonizes the conscience. Empaths absorb pain, but in a cult like setting, they also absorb control. Every word from God becomes a hook that pulls at their energy. Every demand for loyalty becomes a drain on their life force. The empath starts feeling sick without understanding why. Emotionally, physically, spiritually depleted. They give love to a structure that cannot love back, only feed. And the longer they stay, the more the line between worship and servitude blurs. What they think is devotion is often trauma bonding. The empath becomes addicted to the approval of their oppressors. Cultic religion thrives off empaths because empaths make excellent followers. They're loyal, empathetic, and deeply spiritual. But a narcissist or predatory leader sees them as a resource, not a soul. The empath's compassion becomes the power supply. Their forgiveness becomes permission, and their silence becomes currency in a system that feeds on quiet compliance. The leader will teach dependence disguised as discipleship. They'll say, God told me you're under my covering, when what they really mean is, you belong to me. But God never creates covenants that require you to lose your identity to prove your faith. There comes a moment when even the most loving empath begins to suffocate. They realize peace no longer visits. The voice of God that once felt close now feels filtered through fear, and the body starts rebelling, anxiety, insomnia, emotional shutdown, because the spirit knows when it's imprisoned. Breaking free isn't easy. When you leave a cult like system, you're not just leaving people, You're leaving programming. You mourn not just relationships, but the identity you built around them. But you can't heal in a place that profits from your brokenness. Freedom starts in whispers. The empath begins hearing God again, quietly outside the noise. They realize that connection was never meant to come through a gatekeeper. They start remembering their spiritual sovereignty. In that silence, healing begins. Tears become prayers again. Dreams return. Energy lifts. They discover that God was never confined to the community that condemned them. They find heaven within, not hierarchy above. That's the divine irony. That the very community that broke them ended up awakening their true authority. Healing doesn't mean rejecting faith. It means reclaiming it. The empath learns to separate God from God's representatives. They learn that discernment isn't rebellion, it's protection. That boundaries are sacred. That peace is permission. That their empathy was not a weakness, it was a weapon they were never taught to use correctly. They rebuild slowly, quietly, authentically. This time without fear, this time with choice. To every empath who escaped a cult disguised as a church or a spiritual family, you are not backsliding. You are returning to yourself. You are not crazy. You were conditioned. And what they called rebellion was actually resurrection. They said you left covering, but you were only stepping out of captivity. Your faith didn't die there, it was born there. Thank you for visiting my channel. Stay covered, stay conscious, stay undefeated. See you on the next one.